Okay, looks like we're ready to go. So welcome back, everyone, to a real meeting at City Hall. It's exciting. Good to see everybody's faces. It's June 9th, 2021 Downtown Action Committee hearing. If we could please start with a roll call.
Roger Jansen.
Present.
Nick Mihilich.
Present.
Brian Checkis.
Present.
Stephen Graham.
Present.
Michael Cuevas.
Present.
Brad McPherson.
Present.
Gregory Gabriel.
Present.
Perfect, thank you. So item 2, minutes from the May 12th meeting. Does anyone have any comments or like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None. Motion carries. Minutes from May 12th are approved. Item 3, report from City Urban Designer, Ms. Aponte.
Good morning, Ana Maria Aponte, City Urban Designer for the record. As Roger Johnson said, welcome back to live meetings. We are happy to have everybody here with all the safety precautions that we can have. It has been a tough year, but we have not stopped. The city keeps moving, and we have managed to continue through the COVID to process projects, approve permits, and have projects moving forward as nothing had happened. So that is a good news. I hope everybody stays safe during this year, and we're ready to move on from this situation and be safe again. That's all I have to report for this morning.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, it's exciting to see things moving the way they are and the city growing. It's just been a crazy year all around, so thanks for all your help as usual. So 5, any ex parte communication on today's case by anybody on the committee? Seeing none, we'll move forward to the public hearing, and we'll go on down to the first case, code revision case, PB 1882A, city initiated request for text amendment to Article 4, and if we could kindly have staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, welcome back to everybody. I'm excited to begin this presentation. I'll turn it over to Anna halfway through, but this is something that she and I have been working on for well over a year, so I'll begin the presentation. What we'd like to do today is talk about our existing downtown incentive areas, talk about the impacts that Anna just kind of touched upon, the impacts of the pandemic on the city of West Palm Beach, downtown in particular. Then I'll talk a little bit about both the Class A office market and the hotel market. We'll talk about the regulation within downtown development, and then Anna will expound a little bit more on the workforce housing incentive that we are proposing today and discuss the proposed text amendments, and then certainly we'll provide our recommendation and open it up to any questions you may have. So just to kind of give the big picture of what we're doing, as the DAC is aware, we have several incentives that we've been using to regulate development within our downtown master plan. So within the Quadrille Business District, we've had incentives for both residential, Class A office in excess of 200,000 square feet, full-service hotels comprised of a minimum of 200 hotel rooms. In the Quadrille Garden District, we've had incentives for Class A office and a full-service hotel. And this is the incentive that Jeff Green took advantage of for his 550 Quadrille 1 West Palm project. More recently, we adopted the Okeechobee Business District in an effort to incentivize Class A office within our office corridor along Okeechobee Boulevard. And then historically, we had a Clematis Waterfront Boutique Hotel incentive that really hadn't been utilized all that much. And as Anna will touch upon, we're suggesting that that be deleted from the downtown master plan. So just to talk a little bit about what's happened during the pandemic. Now, surprisingly, what COVID-19 has done is drive a lot of businesses to West Palm Beach in numbers we have not seen. So I'm a numbers guy, and I track all of the revenue in our department, both from the building, permitting, and business tax standpoint. So this reflects the building revenues that we have collected on average from fiscal year 15 to fiscal year 20. And you compare that to what we've done in the middle of a pandemic, I mean, it's pretty impressive, a 77%, 73%, 57% increase in revenue over the average of the last 6 years. This is only the second time in the city's history where we've actually received $1 million in building permit revenue in 3 successive months. And if we do it again in June, it'll be the first time ever we've had 4 successive months of $1 million in permit activity. So we've been very busy, to say the least. As a department, with regard to building revenues, again, during that same 6-year period, we've averaged about $9.95 million. We are on track this year to average about $11.59 $1.9 million in building permit revenue this year. So we've been very busy, which is a good thing. And then from a departmental standpoint, again, I track all revenues over periods of time, and then you see over the last 6 years, from 15 to 16, this is how much we've collected through May. And this year, in the middle of a pandemic, we've collected nearly $13.3 million, which is the highest we've ever collected in the history of the city. So that bodes well for West Palm Beach, which means you guys are going to be very busy in the weeks to come as we continue to bring you more new projects. So talking about the Class A office market, I'm preaching to the choir when I talk about the 1 million square feet. You guys are familiar with the 3 projects, the 4 buildings we have in Class A office. The last Class A office building was built in 2008 with the City Place project. And as you know, through the Okeechobee Business District and other incentives that we provided, we have been desperately trying to develop an additional Class A office building over the last 10 years with little or no success. Certainly with the pandemic now, we have 360 Rosemary, which hopes to receive its first TCO this month. We have 1 Flagler that was approved by this body, with hopefully a start later this year. We have the West Palm Point project, the tent site developed by Charles Cohen, that'll go to our planning board in July or August. And then you have Jeff Green continuing now to move forward with the construction of his 1 West Palm project. So we're now adding, in addition to the 1 million square feet, we have now in addition 1 million square feet. So our concern and lack of Class A office building really isn't an issue with us anymore. And we're going to continue to introduce new projects and discussions with Related and Rosemary Square. We will be seeing additional Class A office construction in addition to the 4 I'm referencing here. With regard to hotels, we've got the Bend that was recently completed on the old City Hall site. The Canopy opened within the past year. Again, 1 West Palm will have a hotel component. The Cosmopolitan was approved by this body. We're not sure if they're going to move forward, but they have 204 rooms. And then we are also working with the AC Marriott, which is the second phase of the Marriott Residence Inn that you saw a while back. That'll be coming before the DAC, hopefully in the next few months. But combined, we're adding an additional 883 rooms to the downtown. So again, the concern with a lack of hotel is not really an issue with us anymore. So, and again, just to recap, and you've heard this before, that our downtown master plan sits within a transportation concurrency exception area, which means that we, the city, have the ability to build just under 15.1 million square feet of non-residential, provided that we build at least 6,934 residential units. So there has to be that balance of residential to non-residential. Pursuant to this approval back in, I think, 1997 by both the county and the state, that balance of residential to non-residential has to be a minimum of 0.46. So it's residential units divided by non-residential per 1,000 square feet. We can go over that ratio, we just can't be under it. Once we're under it, we lose our TCEA. So the good news is the residential, we've already achieved our goal of 7,473 units downtown. We have, believe it or not, an additional 1,600 units in the pipeline. So we're going to be well in excess of 9,000 residential units, so no longer an issue. The non-residential, we still have an additional 5 million square feet of availability. Now, what the TCA means that you could have intersections or roadway links that fail. Obviously, our goal is not to have them achieve a level of service F. So we do site-specific traffic studies for each project that comes in, and I'm pleased to say that we don't have intersections or roadway links that are failing miserably. But the good news is that as of the end of March of this year, we have to provide both the state and the county a report each year, and that ratio is 0.76. And the thought is that if you have residential, a lot of residential downtown, you have less people having to commute in. That's why the county and the state was seeking that balance. So we're well in excess of that number. But what Ann and I had been discussing is that certainly the concern is that housing has to be made affordable to the people that are working here. Otherwise, it enforces the issue of people having to commute into the downtown for their jobs. So we have that threshold of 15.1 million square feet. So we cannot allow any additional development over and above that number. And as I mentioned, that concept was approved by both the state and Palm Beach County. We can move development, as you are aware, from one site through the other through the sending of transfer of development rights from historic sites and open space to other sites. Currently, the market right now is those TDRs are selling in the range of about 12 to 15 million square feet. And then most of the TDRs that the city had came from Gateway Park at Australian and Okeechobee, but that million square feet that we had is pretty much exhausted at this point, so we don't have any left. We have approximately 2 million still available in the private market. And how the incentive work, I think you're all familiar with it, but for the public I'll mention, and I'll use the example of the Quadrille Garden District and let's say the One West Palm project. So if a person wanted to build a combination of Class A office and hotel, again, with the incentive that we have in place right now, they would have to build a minimum of 200,000 square feet of Class A office. They would have to build a minimum of 200 full-service hotel rooms. The current zoning in that district allows for 2.75, but with this incentive, that FAR could be increased to 5.5. And in this particular case, again, the base height is 10 stories. If you build either a Class A office building or a hotel, you're allowed to go to 25 stories or 380 feet. If you do both, then that incentive allows a developer to go to 30 stories and 455 feet. And that's what Mr. Green chose to do on the One West Palm project. So that's kind of how the incentive works. So I'll quickly touch upon the workforce housing incentive that Ann and I have been working on, and she's going to elaborate on this in more detail. But if you have a project that has a base capacity of a floor area ratio of 2.75, and let's say it's 10 stories, with the workforce housing incentive, they can increase that by an additional 2 stories and an FAR of 1.25. That's the incentive that would be provided. The developer would, number one, have to acquire the TDRs for the area reflected in green over and above what's permitted by right. And then what the city is suggesting is that that workforce housing component must be 27% of the additional incentive that the developer is receiving. And then we are asking that that be given back to the city in the form of workforce housing. So Anna will elaborate on that in more detail. I will say that originally when we started this concept, we were proposing that a developer contribute 33%, that be the set aside. The workforce housing incentive must be set aside for a period of 20 years. We did have a workshop with the mayor and commission, and we discussed 3 options in order to satisfy that workforce housing incentive, so Anna will elaborate on those. We also looked at 5 recent residential projects, and we compared the rent that they are charging for those projects to the area median income to ascertain how to best structure this program. And then we had a series of Zoom calls with a lot of developers, probably 8 or 9 separate conversations with developers to solicit input on the proposed program. And then what they told us was the big obstacle in the development of workforce housing downtown was the price of land in our downtown. So during one of those discussions, we mentioned to them that one of the things we can talk about is a tax increment financing reimbursement program. And the concept there is that if a developer is charging X amount for rent, the workforce housing requires that the fee be here. We bridge that gap between what we would ask them to charge versus what they are charging. So eliminate that discrepancy, if you will, in the rental rates, and we suggested doing that for a period of 10 years. But again, Anna will elaborate a little bit more on that. But we think that concept works. And then we ran a lot of test cases on the 5 projects. And again, they're recent projects, and surprisingly, all of them seem to fall into the same range when we compared those rental rates to the AMI. The other thing that we're going to suggest is that the specific housing program, while some of the specifics will have to be in the zoning and land development regulations, the downtown master plan in particular, the details of the tax increment program, the reimbursement, we're going to put in a separate document with the thought is that if we decided to tweak that or change the number, we don't want to have to go through a full-blown change to the zoning code every time we want to make a small amendment. So we'll discuss the specifics of that program, but ultimately we'll have a separate document that gets adopted by resolution by the City Commission. So with that, I'll turn it over to Anna, and she'll get into a lot more detail.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, so I'm going to explain a little bit how the program itself is proposed at this point to hope to get some feedback from the board. So the first analysis that we did is the housing supply in the downtown has increased substantially in the last 15 years. So we have been producing around 226 units per year in the downtown area with projects that go from Parkland Beaches to Broadstones, all high-rise residential buildings, most of them in the core of the downtown. However, the rent prices are not affordable to most of the population, as we can get a comparison of the price of these rent, the rent for these units and studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. We didn't even go to the 3 bedrooms that we have. Small amount of them, not a lot, but we have some. The price range for those rental units is substantially higher than what a family earning the area median income, that is $80,200, can afford. So the goal is, if you compare it, if you see, like, we compared families with an income between 60 and 100% and what is allowed for them to afford, or what they can afford in rent, compared with the market rate, it's a substantial gap. As of course, the studio, that is the smaller unit, is more affordable because it's less square footage, but as you go higher, the gap increases. So you go from the market rate for a studio, the average is around $1,700, and then a family with an income of 60% of the area median income can only afford a $900 rent. So it's a substantial gap, and if we want a good number of people that work downtown to be able to live downtown, we need to do something to kind of bridge that gap and offer options for people to live downtown. So who are these targeted people? I mean, as I say, the area median income is $80,200 for the year 2021. And this number is based on the numbers that are put together at Florida Housing Finance Corporation, based on the HUD numbers also. So the incentive will target families earning 60 to 100% of the AMI, that is an income basically between around $48,000 to $80,000 a year. And this is for a family, depending if you are a single person, then it has a specific income. If you have a family of 2, a family of 3, so have different ranges that they calculated. But these could be people like teachers, public workers, young professionals that work downtown. Just as an example, we run the numbers for the city employees, and approximately 70% of the city employees earn below 100% of the AMI. Of course, again, this is one person calculated, so it may vary and change the percentages once you calculate a household. But just as a single numbers, around 70% of the employees that work in City Hall earn less than 100% of the AMI. So based on these numbers, the city starts to propose a housing incentive to promote the construction of rental units, residential units, below the market rate in the downtown area. So we have done a couple of things. The first one is identified which areas in the downtown are still available, and we can increase the development capacity and expand the ability to propose incentives. So we are proposing to modify the figure 4-35, that is the figure that identifies which areas are eligible to increase development capacity and height, specifically for the area around the TUD and the cultural art districts, that is the area west and the portion west of the downtown, and we are proposing to modify that area to allow incentives within that area for additional development capacity. It was not identified before, despite it was a transit-oriented development district. So we felt like it was appropriate to increase that. And the reason is because that area is the area that is best suited for public transportation. We have the 2 trains coming between that area and has the better connection for public transportation. And it's also the area where the land could be less expensive. It's not close to the water, so it's not the prime views of the downtown. So it could be more geared to having some type of lower income units. Or I would say not lower income, like a mixed income project. We also like to add that we had added some areas north of Banyan Boulevard last year when we did the changes for the Northwest neighborhood. We added and modified the development capacity of the blocks on the edge of the Northwest neighborhood along Banyan Boulevard. That area is also very appropriate for this type of mixed income projects. So the second thing that we are suggesting is to modify the existing affordable housing incentive program that we have. And we have an affordable housing incentive program that has been in place for some time. The program basically offers developers additional development capacity and offer them city-owned TDRs free of charge to compensate for the requirement. The projects had to include residential units for families between 50 and 100% of the AMI, and it was kind of a ratio, depending on how many square feet they were providing in the restricted units, they will get market rate square footage, so it was kind of a ratio. With this program, we have gotten 3 projects, one of which, the Evernia Place, is already built and constructed, and it's in the corner of Sapodilla and Evernia, and it produced 85 units. They are all below 80% of the AMI, but this project is also a tax credit project, so it received additional funding from the state to finance the project, and all the units are lower income units. We have 2 projects right now that are moving forward utilizing the existing affordable housing project. One is the Flagler Station that is currently under construction at the corner of Banyan and Tamarind. That project, similar to the Vernia Place, is also a tax credit project, so all the units are below 80% of the AMI. The city gave them the TDRs as an incentive, but they have additional funding from the state to have all the units below 80%. So these 2 projects are not really a market rate projects, and is not what the incentive that we're drafting is targeting. The third project is the grant that is currently under review, and from that project, that is a mixed income project. 103 units of the 309 proposed will be below the 100% of AMI. The city gave them additional FAR, and to increase it, the TDRs were offered for with no cost, and additional funding was provided to them. So, but if we look at these projects that have all taken advantage of the program, in reality, these are optionals, so they didn't have to do it, they opt to do it. And from the ones, I mean, not counting the ones that are under construction, from the 3,397 units that were produced in the downtown, only 85 were produced for an income below 80%. So these are not, I mean, despite it's great to have these projects, it's not a really encouraging numbers, and we definitely identify that we need to do much better if we want to really have housing in the downtown for the workforce. So the proposal is basically to expand the project or the program, the affordable housing, modify it to expand it, and the program will be basically applicable to any project proposing residential units in the downtown that desires to use TDRs to increase the development capacity. So different than the previous program or what we have right now, where they could opt to do it. I mean, they could use the TDRs and increase the development capacity, but they could decide if they wanted the TDRs from the city. The new program will say if you are deciding to do residential in the downtown and you want to increase your development capacity, you will be required to provide these units back to the city. The other thing that is different is, as Rick mentioned before, the city does not own TDRs at this point. Our supply of city-owned TDRs is very low, so the developer will have to acquire the TDRs in the private market. And all this has been kind of accounted in all the calculations of what the new program will work, or how they will work. So if we account that they will have to acquire the TDRs in the private market, we are offering the additional development capacity, but then from that additional development capacity, they will be required to provide 27% of the incentive area back to in income restrictive units. So, and those units will be split between 60 and 100% with minimum requirements. So 25% of the units require from that 27% will be 60% or below, 25% had to be 80% or below, and then the remaining 50% could be at any income level that the developer decides. The unit mix and size shall reflect the market rate units that the developer is proposing, and then the requirement will be for 20 years to have those units restricted. Just to run an example of how this will work. So I use a project that is already approved. So this project is under construction already at 303 Banyan. They came before this program was in place, so they are not required to provide any affordable housing units. They didn't opt to do any units under the existing program. So it's a totally market rate program. Project. So, but I run the numbers because I have all the numbers of the unit mix and all that, so it's very helpful for us. So the site just have 72,372 square feet. By right, this project is allowed to have 199,023 square feet of gross building area. The additional FAR allowed for this site is a 1 FAR that allows them to basically increase the development capacity by 72,372 square feet, with a total development capacity adding the base plus the incentive. So calculating the requirements as proposed, from that total number, 27% of the incentive area, that means that from the 72,372, have to be set aside. And we offer a 20% discount for efficiency to account for corridors and stairs and all that from that area. So it results in a requirement of 15,632 square feet that has to be dedicated to residential units set aside with below market rate. So how do that translate into units? We take the average unit size that the project is gonna give us. In this case, I didn't have the average unit size for this, so we calculated what is the average unit size for the downtown, that is 800 square feet, and divide the requirement into that, and it basically results in the requirement of 20 units. So for this project, 20 units have to be set aside for income restricted. And then it has to be divided into studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms. We discounted 3 bedrooms. We're not gonna require 3 bedrooms because the gap is too much. So we're discounting, basically if the project has 3 bedrooms, we're not requiring them to provide below market rates on 3 bedrooms, only studios, 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. And then it's required to split the percentages. So it results on that they have to set aside 8 units as studios, 7 units as 1 bedroom, and 5 units for 2 bedrooms. In comparison with the market rate units they are 93, 55, and 19, and they are also doing 36 for 3 bedrooms. So if you compare these based on the numbers, this results in basically the project will have to provide 9% of the total number of units to set aside for income restricted. And this is, looking at the overall increase of the overall benefit is they are getting 52 additional units in exchange for the 20 units that they have to set aside. So it's basically a 36% increase in development capacity for the developers if they decide to use this incentive. Again, this is not a requirement. They could come in with just the base FAR and do a 2.75 FAR project, and they will not have to do anything. But we believe the numbers that we have put together, the benefits are substantial that the project could be beneficial for the developer. So these are the base numbers that will be included in the zoning code. In addition to the development capacity, the city is proposing a complementary program to provide additional financial support to participants. And this is based on the conversations that we have with the developers. As Rick mentioned, we have several conversations with the developers on how the numbers could work because of the cost of the land in downtown is substantial. They are high rise, so the cost of constructions are higher. So we need to offer a little bit more to make the project still viable for them. So we're working with the CRA right now on drafting a tax increment finance program that is right now in the works. It's not finalized, and assessed is not going to be on the zoning code. So you will not have to approve it. It will have to be approved by the CRA board as a separate. But we're showing you what the initial concept is and based on the numbers that we have worked. So the program is proposing basically to reimburse developers a percentage of their county and city portion of the ad valorem property tax generated by the project. At this point, based on the numbers that we have and based on the current or the calculations that we did for the average rent price and the average or the rent price that the income restricted units can pay, we calculate the gaps between those two, and the goal of this incentive or this tax increment finance is to fill that gap between the price of those two rentals. So the project will be eligible to receive a reimbursement of up to 30% of the county and city ad valorem tax for 10 years, and with a maximum reimbursement by income of according with a restricted unit. So we are proposing, depending on the income level of the unit, the reimbursement will be higher or lower. So if, for example, for the units that they are required to provide at 60% of the MI, the reimbursement will be $16,000 a year. So in 10 years will be $160,000 per unit. If they decide to do only the 25% at 60% and the 25% at 80%, and the rest of the units are all at 100%, then for the 100% units, they will receive $8,000 per year as a reimbursement from the taxes. And this is because the gap, of course, is different, so we are kind of accounting for that variation. That is kind of the additional program that will be put in place. Then the next step is how they can comply with the program. The program developers can opt for 3 options to comply with this. The first one is to provide the units on site as part of the project, and this is I will say the most desirable option for the city, because we want the units to be built as a mixed income project within the projects. The units shall be finished and match the standard finishes of the market rate and cannot be clustered and segregated within the same project, so they have to be distributed. Then the second option that we are offering based on conversations with the developers is to provide the units off-site in a different building. The only thing that we are suggesting in this is like let's say you have a project that is a super high-end project on the waterfront or something, so you don't want to, the units are super high, so the rents will be very high, so you don't want to provide the set-aside units in that building. You can provide it in another building, but the condition is that that building has to be located within the downtown area. So we don't want those units to be located on Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard, because it defeats the purpose of having the people living in the downtown and not having to commute. So they could acquire another land in another location, let's say the TOD area, build another project that is a lower level of income and have the restricted units in that building. The alternative location, say, has to be on the downtown area, and the units have to be constructed before or concurrently with the mother project, what we're calling the parent project. So we have put some language that's, things don't go that exact, so we have put some language that's what happens if the parent project is finished and the alternative location is not finished. So we have some bonding requirements, so for us to be sure that the alternative location is going to be completed in terms of the construction. And then the third option that we are offering is the payment in lieu. The developer could contribute the required amount to the housing trust fund, and the required amount is based on per square foot construction cost according to the International Code Council Building Valuation data table, which establishes the cost of construction per building type. And this is a table that is used by the building department to estimate the cost of the projects. When a developer comes in and submit for a project, for a building permit, this is a table that calculates what is the square footage of construction, and it's based on building type. So usually the downtown projects that are high-rise buildings, they are what they call type 1B, and it's around $162 a square foot. So we will use these to calculate how much is the payment in lieu for these projects. And it's based on the square footage. So if we go back to the original example that I gave for the 303 Banyan, the requirement was 19,540 square feet at $162, so the contribution will be $3,167,238. So that will be the amount that they will have to pay in order to basically buy out the requirement for the below market rate units. They will have to pay it at the time of submitting for the building permit, and then they will be clear. Again, this is the least desirable option, so we are offering all the incentives for the other options to kind of try to incentivize the developers to build the units on site. That is what it's really more attractive for the city. In addition to the affordable housing program or the downtown master plan housing incentive program, we are proposing a couple of additional changes. Rick already talked about these changes, but basically we are removing the Equatorial Business District incentive in terms of, it's a special incentive that provided city-owned TDRs free of charge for the construction of Class A office and full-service hotel. As Mr. Green explained, the city does not believe at this point we need to incentivize those uses anymore. We have enough of those projects moving forward, and the market is strong for them to be constructed without any city incentives. So we're proposing to remove that special incentive. However, the intensity of development suggested on that area is still appropriate, so we're going to leave the ability for projects to go to the 6.5 FAR and the 25 stories that was suggested under the Quadro Business District, but they will have to basically go to the private market and acquire the TDRs, because the city does not have any, and we don't think it's necessary to incentivize them. So it's open to any use at this point. The same way, we are suggesting to remove the special incentive for the Quadro Garden District to build Class A and full-service hotels. In this case, the city was not offering TDRs at no cost, but the incentive was, the additional height was offered only for those type of uses. So we are leaving the development capacity. We are reducing it from the original 30 that was suggested with the two uses to 25, but the incentive will be there. The developers can use it for any use that they want. So if they want to do an office, a hotel, or a residential, they could just go to the private market, acquire the TDRs, and they will be able to build the project in compliance with the requirements. So if they are doing residential, they will have to comply with the requirements of the housing incentive program. But if they are doing office, they could just go ahead, build acquire the TDRs and build a project for an office. We're suggesting to maintain in the Okeechobee Business District as it was approved a couple of years ago. And Mr. Green also mentioned the existing Clematis Waterfront District Boutique Hotel that was utilized by the Clematis Boutique Hotel that is approved but not built. We are suggesting that program to be removed because it was expired several years ago, but it's still on the books. In summary, basically, the incentives continue to operate through the TDR program. So again, we are not increasing the overall development capacity of the downtown. Everything is achieved through the transfer of development rights. So the developers will have to acquire the TDRs from historic buildings or generate public open spaces to transfer the capacity to the new sites. So no increase in the overall development capacity of the downtown will occur in compliance with the TCEA. We are expanding the TDR receiving sites in the areas where we think the land is more affordable, and mixed-use income projects could happen to incentivize the construction of and the compliance with the housing incentive that we're proposing. And we're also opening the TDR receiving sites to all the uses permitted according with the table. Except for the OBD, all the other receiving sites could do any use permitted in the district. And again, if they are deciding to do residential, they will have to provide or set aside the units for required percentage for the income, 60 to 100%. Staff recommends approval of planning board case number 1882A based on the findings that the proposed amendment complies with all the amendment standards found in section 8432 of the LDRs. The planning board will hear this case on June 15, and we are scheduling this to be presented to the City Commission on July 12. As Mr. Green mentioned, staff met with several developers through this. We have been working on this for, I think, more than 6 months. And we met with them and received input from them for several meetings.
I just mentioned that's 9432.
94, yes, sorry. Section 9432, not 84. My bad. That concludes the staff presentation, and we would like to hear your comments about this.
Wow, thank you. Very good, thorough presentation. A lot of research gone into that. That's great. So, yeah, do we need to take any public comment on this one?
Yes.
Yeah, why don't we ask and see if there's any public comment on this case before we open it up to the board? Seeing none, then we'll close the public discussion and open up for questions from any of the board members. Who would like to start? There we go.
Anna Maria, in your discussions with the developers, was there any talk of further incentives for them now that they have to go to the private market and buy those TDRs? Because essentially what we're saying and what we've been hearing is that the city owned are pretty much exhausted. Has there been any discussion as part of maybe the CRA incentive to keep them into that number one option of building on site to potentially pay down or help offset the cost of buying the TDRs, whereas they would have probably got them for free from the city? Is that has that discussion come up with the developers and with staff?
No, what we focus our attention is to basically try to fill the gap between the price of the rental units.
Right, totally get
So
that.
that's what the tax increment finance program will be geared to do. Our take is that the additional development capacity should be enough for them to cover the price of the TDRs. And I mean, it's in some cases they are some areas are doubling their development capacity from the base, depending on where they are. And that's also the tricky part about this, that it also the numbers change depending of the land, the location, how much incentive they can do, and all that. So it's very site specific, and each developer will have to run their numbers. But we have not discussed buying or finding TDRs or covering the price of the TDRs.
And the reason why I'm saying this is because the program it's great on the backside. When it's built, they get that kind of efficiency built into it by closing the gap on when it's constructed. But I'm trying to get them through the front door to say, if you want to get more intensity, but we know you have to buy those TDRs, the CRA will help offset maybe a percentage of it to help keep them into that number one option versus that cost being added on at the front end of the project for them. Just thinking in terms of maybe that's another incentive that should be looked at. Not saying we're changing it now, but maybe that's something to consider, that we strengthen up the front end of it to pull them into the pipeline, to keep them on option one, to have them build it on site. It's incentivized on the front side and on the back side to keep them interested. And I think only time's going to tell. You have 84 or 89 units that have been built over all these years that are truly under the 80% AMI. In 5 years from now, is this enough to incentivize developers to use the program? And just something to think about.
Can I ask a question relating to that, Brian? The free TDRs were only for Class A, right?
Yeah, the program that we had, free TDRs, were for Class A office in the Quadro Business District and full service hotel in the Quadro Business District only. And then we had the affordable housing program that offered free TDRs for residential buildings that were doing the below market, the 50 to 100% restricted income. But apart from that, we did not offer TDRs free for any other projects. So most of the projects downtown have been developed without any free TDRs.
Can you say this?
Or any subsidy to
The second part. So about the free TDRs in relation to the affordable housing, we haven't had really. Well, I guess there was the option previous, but no one was taking advantage of it. Correct?
Yeah, it's the 3 projects that I mentioned.
I'm just wondering, I mean, like, I know now we seem to, are not trying to incentivize Class A, and it seemed like that's really where the free TDRs were directed to previously. The affordable housing, it didn't really have much of an impact because that wasn't being offered, or
Well,
I
it
guess
was
no one
being
was taking.
offered, but it
It
wasn't
was
being
offered.
utilized. That's
It was
the difference.
offered.
It's there.
Okay.
But
No one's
I
used
mean, the market rate projects never wanted to get the TDRs for free. They just financed their project buying the TDRs in the private market. They didn't
Okay.
want to have any restriction.
I'm just trying to get as many tools in the toolbox, even on the front side,
Right.
to incentivize them to
Okay.
get into it and get in the pipeline versus, these are great incentives on the backside once it's all developed, and they're gonna, equalize that, that price differential between the market rate ones and the, these,
I got
lower
you.
rate
I
ones.
understand now. Yeah, if no one was utilizing them, then it wasn't
Right.
really.
So in my opinion, that it wasn't doing it wasn't incentivizing them in any way. And we want to make sure we get them pulled in. So how do we lower that cost on the front side? The back side's covered. Great program. We got to think about things on the front side, I think. Great program. I think it's important. We need it at the city. It's obviously important to keep our workforce here, local, downtown, walking to work, staying in the city and not using vehicles to get in and out to access their jobs. Super important. Everything sounds really good. And we just need to make sure we're working with all those developers to understand what would help incentivize them to stay in the game and do these projects and get this built and actually have units in the ground. Thanks, Anna Maria. It's a good program.
Just a little further to Brian, you talk about incentives. Did you give consideration to things like building permit fee waivers, impact fee incentives? expedited permitting, that kind of stuff. That's that sort of front end thing, you know, with developers looking at a project going, okay, how can I limit that initial cost? Is that something you considered? I mean, I know there's a lot of other things you've built in there, but.
Yeah, actually, I apologize. I totally forgot about that. I should have put it on the presentation, but we included some additional kind of flexibility on the zoning requirements for those projects participating. So if we go to, and I'm gonna just find it.
Now you're exposing the fact that maybe I
yes.
didn't read every single page of the packet.
Under page 53 of your staff report, we included some exemption from code requirements for the projects. So if a project participates in this program, for example, we're offering that they do not have to comply with the guest parking for the residential portion of the project. We believe like there's enough parking garages in the downtown that the 1 per 20 units required for guest parking is not totally necessary. So that's something that we can offer. We are offering if, for example, if any of the proposed units are micro units, they do not have to pay the transit fee required for those units that are income restricted, not for the total number of units, but only the units that are income restricted that are micro units. That's a $10 fee per unit per month, so they will not have to pay that. We are offering the private open space requirement to be reduced by 25% from the applicable requirement for the respective building requirement table. The public open space also to be reduced by 15% of the total amount required, and they just have to locate the entire public open space requirement in one single location instead of splitting it. And we are offering also a reduction of the active use requirement along primary streets above the first stories. Most of the sites require 60% of active use. We're offering to reduce it by 50%, so they will have to do only 30%.
We do offer expedited right now. We do.
And we offer expedited review for affordable, but I think that was for
Building permits, we do it now.
building permit, but it's for when they are totally affordable, not mixed income. Okay, so we are offering expedited review for those permits.
Yeah.
So my apologies, I mean, I should
That's
have
fine.
included that on the presentation, but we kind of prepared these to kind of offer certain things in terms of the flexibility for the zoning, compliance with the zoning code requirement that we believe are beneficial for multifamily buildings. Most of you have seen a lot of times they come and ask for the waiver or variance for the active uses. Because it makes the parking garages more efficient, so we are offering that as a perk for the participation in the program.
A couple of other questions just around the options, you know, the providing the units on site, providing them off site, payment in lieu, you know, those three things are pretty typical of what we see in affordable workforce housing programs, you know, elsewhere throughout the, you know, the state, the country. If they pursue the off-site option, is there protection in the code or in the program that they still can't cluster those off-site units, as in they can't, you know, they're required to provide 20 units. They can't just go and build a 20-unit affordable housing project. Does it have to be incorporated as part of a market rate project as well, or could it become a standalone project? If the intent is that, you know, we want to integrate housing, which I think that is what it is, I think that's something that probably needs to be considered as part of that option, that, you know, we don't go and just find low-cost land somewhere else in the downtown and just put in 20 units as a standalone affordable project. Has that been explored?
You're right. We didn't contemplate that. We
Yeah.
didn't, I mean, we included the requirements for the off-site, just says that it has to match the finishes and the quality of the parent project. We didn't think about that they could buy a lower density site where only 20 units could be.
Yeah.
I don't know if necessarily you think it's not a good idea, that you should not allow it?
Well, I mean, you know, I guess the intent of the program is that, you know, you said if you provide it on site, they can't be segregated, they can't be isolated in one part of the development. Obviously, the intention with, you know, workforce affordable housing is that they be accommodated within, you know, an overall market rate development or area. So, I know there have been issues with concentrations of affordable housing and some of those issues that maybe come with that. So I don't know if I'm saying you should or you shouldn't do it, but I think that is going to be something that is going to be a consequence of the decision. If a developer says, okay, I want to do off-site, and they say, I want to do all 20 in a particular location, is the city okay with that? I think we need to be sort of prepared to think about that as a consequence of that action. I don't know if I necessarily have an opinion, as much as I can see that being a potential result.
Good point.
Yeah.
We'll look into it.
The payment in lieu, the Housing Trust Fund, the payment into the Housing Trust Fund, that's a citywide fund?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's a
okay.
citywide fund and it's currently existing. It's used to provide incentives for developers or rental assistance or even renovation assistance for projects for
Okay,
affordable.
so would the payment in lieu of providing it on-site downtown, that proportionate amount then be directed back to programs in the downtown area?
Not necessarily in the downtown. It's a citywide fund. So it's not
Okay.
necessarily that if a project pays the payment in lieu, those resources will go to the Housing Trust Fund, and then the Housing Trust Fund use those throughout the city, not only in the downtown.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I probably would, my opinion, I think, it would be, again, worth exploring that payment being directed to the downtown if the intent of the program is that, we're providing it in the downtown area. So,
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Graham, I agree with you. I think that if the money's collected downtown, I think as part of the trust fund, it should be earmarked to be spent and utilized downtown. So we can elaborate on that as we bring that topic to the commission, but I agree with you. I think it should be focused and stay downtown.
I raised that at the city I work at. We've been through affordable housing with Broward County for the last 2 to 3 years, and with the payment in lieu option, the cities, particularly those cities that had housing authorities and affordable housing, mechanisms, fought hard to ensure that any in lieu payments weren't necessarily directed to the county and get dispersed county-wide rather than, it coming directly to the area where the need was initially intended. So,
Good point.
so I think that's probably, an important thing. I guess also, I'm interested to know a little bit about the feedback from your meetings with the development community. I'm typically their immediate fallback is probably to go to the in lieu option. I think that's sort of that first thought process for them. When these 3 options were presented to them, how was that received? And were you meeting with the types of developers that you expect to develop, or you would think would be the ones interested in developing in the specific areas where we want to see this incentive?
We met with several developers that have done projects downtown. We met with the developer of the Vernia Place, the developer of the Flagler Station. We met with Nadir Solor, the developer of Lofting Place, Flagler, the developer of the Oversea. So different range of projects. So they all have different perspectives. One thing that we did is when we originally presented the proposal to them, the tax increment finance program was not in there.
Okay.
So we had only presented as requiring the set aside, and they all said like they didn't think that will work. So then that's when we implemented the tax increment finance. I think we put this out last week, so I don't think we have not had conversations since this last version of the program is in there. I guess now we're going to have those conversations and get back to them and discuss more details and get more feedback from them for that.
Okay, thank you. And just one final comment, I think having this, a separate guiding document that runs with the code's obviously an excellent idea. It can be more flexible, more easily to be amended and things like that. And I've no doubt you've thought of this, but, there is a host of incentives clearly that are available to exercise these options under the code. And, I think a document that can be really well presented to the community, like a very, that just clearly outlines, you come in and you want to do, well, we want you to do affordable housing and you want to do it. Here is the suite of incentives that are available to you, really spelled out in good plain speak for them and their clientele or their clients, so that they can understand that. So just as you do develop that document, again, having been through this experience myself, just knowing that we deal with the codes and things, we all understand these things, but to be able to present it in a clear and concise form to a potential developer, I think will make it that initial sell much easier. So, other than that, I think this is a challenge, and it's a challenge across the county and across the state. So I think this is a good step forward for the downtown area. The one final question, it's not directly related to downtown master plan, but are there other efforts underway outside of the DMP to address housing affordability? Because these people that live in these types of units will look to move elsewhere at some point, and we want to keep them in our city. What's happening in that?
Yes,
sense?
Mr. Graham, we're running almost a parallel program with our CMUD district. That's the Curry Mixed Use District. This is the property west of Curry Park from roughly 27th Street to the north, Pine Street to the south. And we're developing a very similar program, which, as you mentioned, would have a separate document, a little different than what we're doing downtown, in that we'd still have the same three options. We have provide the units in the building. You could provide it off-site. The off-site, we're having a 2-mile radius from the project,
Okay.
which would cover, for the most part, most of the Broadway, Northwood area, almost everything for the north, and then it sweeps kind of across based on where Curry Park is. It would cover most of the lands of the presidents and then spill into a portion of the downtown. So a project built in the Curry Mixed Use District could provide workforce housing units in the downtown.
Okay.
So it's a parallel system. Some of the mechanics are a little bit different, but it's very close to what we're proposing today.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Interesting. Good. Thanks, Brad. You got anything? Any questions?
It was a very great presentation, guys. I appreciate it from both of you, interesting and informative. A couple questions. When you presented the number of people who fall within the AMI, city employees and others, we didn't get as a 70% or something that are maybe not making up to the highest level of the AMI. Do we have a sense for how many people that are targeted to maybe live downtown? It sounds like it could be thousands that fall in this spectrum. And the reason I'm asking is I'm wondering, is there a target for how many units we're hoping to have constructed that fall within this program? When the example that you provided sounded like, and it was just one example, so it's not every building or anything by any means, but it was just by way of example. If the program was exercised, the developer in that situation would have an additional 52 units, 20 of which I believe would have been rental restricted. So in that example, in that project, we'd have 20 units. I'm just wondering if there's like a target for how many units we're hoping this program results in. We're going to get 100 units, we're going to get 50. Is there any kind of aspirational number that we're looking to achieve?
Well, we don't have an exact number because it will depend exactly how many projects are coming or not, so we'll see. But I mean, the goal that we are putting based on the numbers is that around 10% of the total units produced will have that set aside. So from, let's say if we have 5,000 units, 10% of the units of those 5,000 will have that option, be income restrictive. So that depending on how many units, how many projects get in and are built, but the numbers are built to get around 10% of the units.
Okay.
A little bit low, depending of, also it depends, and again, it depends of where the project is located. They can get more, they have more incentive or less incentive. The example that I show you, they only have a 1 FAR additional. But if they build a project, let's say in the Quadruple Business District, the FAR incentive is, they go from 2.75 to 6.5 FAR. So the incentive is much larger, so the number of units will be much larger. So it depends of the area, we'll get more or less, but if we can get overall 10% of the units produced like that, that would be great.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I had a similar question along the way because not so much of a concern, but it's something that crossed my mind that would it be possible to look at a range or the number of government employees around the downtown area also have a sense of more realistic of providing a close, accurate number for housing, and see what's the likeliness that those employees would want to stay in downtown because we have enough housing for them. It kind of a hard number to come up with. It's not easy, but since we're having that conversation, I just think I'll throw that out there to just look into it. Maybe we can like the pay scale and different county, city employees and see if we can come up with a number.
Again, it is a hard number because it's kind of how do we ask people if they want to or not. But I think at this point, the way we're seeing is the idea is to offer options to people. Because right now, if they want to live downtown, there's nothing affordable for anyone within that income range. So the goal is to offer options. I mean, there will be tons of people that are not interested to live downtown because they have a larger family, because they want a single family, because whatever the reasons are. But there is also a group of people that will like to live downtown, that work downtown, and right now they cannot afford it. So that is kind of the concept. Opportunities and alternatives for people is the key always.
Let's see, Nick, you got anything?
Sure, yeah. That's a good segue into what I was thinking too, just in terms of, and again, I support the directive. I think this is moving in the right direction, but the big question is, would this work? And again, I think maybe talking to the demographics of the workforce, and I don't know what these numbers are, but if you have 1,000 people that are, for argument's sake, part of this workforce, if I'm a 23-year-old bartender, that sounds really cool. I think that would be very great. If I have 3 kids and 2 dogs, I'm not going to do it. So out of that 1,000 or out of the workforce, is there a known market where 300, 400, whatever the representative thing might work? And then the other issue is really, from my perspective, all these meetings we have, the public notification, nobody shows up. Nobody knows about it at a huge level. So if I'm a young person moving to West Palm Beach, how would I know that there are these options downtown for me to consider? And if I'm a resident here 20 years and I have in my mindset, well, I can't live downtown because I can't afford it. Well, now there's this marketing campaign where the whole community knows, hey, we have these options. And I think that needs to be part of this program as well, is, you know, how do you get the word out? How does everybody know that they can potentially take advantage of it? And then the other part, just a real broad stroke, I think at the beginning of the meeting, it's like affordability is an issue. People of the workforce are traveling into downtown and congestion is going up from a traffic standpoint. I don't know if that's the main reason or one of the biggest reasons, but if things are going there and proper planning is try to avoid these problems and integrate systems and make things manageable, what is the latest on transportation initiatives, such as, I think there was a symposium or something a while ago that I did a little work for, where we were talking about, you know, these different modes of transportation, such as, you know, the Dutch microbus or something that might run up and down Okeechobee Boulevard to fix the congestion problem, keep the workforce, but maybe just use other means and methods.
Yeah, Mr. Mihalik, I mean, a lot of that discussion is still ongoing. We've been having and have been in a dialogue with Palm Beach County on a variety of changes. For instance, moving the intermodal transit center onto Tamarind Avenue as opposed to keeping it, you know, behind where it is now on Clearwater Drive. The county has recently, we pitched an idea, gosh, probably 7 or 8 years ago to the then county engineer, George Webb, about the extension of Fern Boulevard across the railroad track and tying into Australian. The county, I don't want to speak for the county, but they've maybe taken a different position on that, and they think that might be something that would help alleviate some of the traffic, particularly east-west along Okeechobee and Banyan. Our preliminary numbers show that, you know, the traffic on Okeechobee could be reduced by about 25% with that alternative. So a lot of those discussions are still ongoing. We did a mobility study, as you know. You see some of the improvements that came out of that study, the improvements to Banyan Boulevard that are ongoing now. So those will continue. So I think that's an effort that's going to be ongoing. With regard to the two comments that were made recently about the numbers, given the volume that we're talking about, if we're successful in getting 10% of all future residential projects taking advantage of this incentive, I think the demand is going to far outweigh the supply. So I'm not concerned about, the number of people that would utilize the units that could be provided that achieve that workforce housing. I mean, we joked internally in just our planning division, we probably had a third of our department or a division would be willing to live in a workforce unit if one was available. So I don't think that the supply is going to be an issue. I think there's going to be a lot more than we can handle. And then in terms of marketing, certainly we'll work with any developer, but it's going to be incumbent upon the developer to market his or her project. And again, I think filling those workforce units is the least of my concern, because I think there's going to be such a strong demand. For the same reason you mentioned, the bartenders and others that want to live downtown and enjoy this lifestyle, right, which is getting greater and greater every day with all these additional projects we're getting. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered your question.
It did, yeah. I guess I'm just also wondering if it's up to the developer and a family or a person comes into one of these buildings and goes to the leasing office. Do they have a legal requirement, I guess, to say, hey, you could buy a market rate, or if your income falls within here, you can buy or get that rent?
Yeah, I mean, that will be all the details that we'll include in that supplemental document. We have seen, for example, other cities, and I saw it when I was doing the research for this, the city of Del Rey has a similar requirement for set-aside units. And in the website, when you go into the website of the project itself, it's already announcing their lower income level units, and it's advertised as part of the website. So something like that, probably something that we will require them to advertise it, and for sure we will include some information on the city's website and other sources of information. But I agree with you, the word has to go out so people know that now there are at least some options.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm sure, like Rick said, the demand will be there. And, if you have product, people are going to want to sell that product, and they're going to get the word out regardless of what rate it's at. So I think the markets will work themselves out there. It was extremely thorough. Thanks for the presentation. I don't have any, everyone covered most of the really salient points there. And I think you touched on with Delray. I'm just assuming, are there any case studies, model programs that you guys looked at when you were doing these studies, or how did you formulate a lot of these specifics?
Yeah, we look at several. The Rey has one set aside that is mandatory. Miami has another one. Each municipality, the county has another one. They have their own little details. They're convoluted, all different ways of calculated incentives. But in general, the kind of the premise is you offer incentives in density and you get something back. That is kind of the overall requirement for everybody. How much or how they paid or how the units are provided for what incomes, they vary enormously from county and city and everybody. But the general premise is once you offer incentives for increasing the density, some of that increase is taken back in terms of a restricted income.
Right. And was it typical, did you find, sort of that you had that the 20-year sort of sunset on these requirements that turns it back to regular market? Is that standard?
Yeah, sometimes it's 15 years, sometimes 30, depending also on the income. And if the product is for sale for rental, they change the time frame also.
And then does that usually correlate with the tax abatement incentives?
Actually, I did not see
that's
from the
10
ones
to
that
10 to
I
20.
saw, I did
20.
not see any tax abatement for those programs. They were all based on density bonuses. So I think actually the one that we're offering, it's more generous than the ones that I saw.
Well, like I always say, you guys, looks like you've done a ton of homework and appreciate the research. So it's sort of beyond my expertise, but it's a great program. I think it's sorely needed, and it will be a benefit to the city in the long run for sure. So thanks for all your hard work on that. Any other questions from anyone?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question. I know you mentioned, Anna, that you removed the incentive for the hotels and Class A office buildings.
Yes.
Yes. Is there a way, I'm just throwing this one out, to think about how to recreate another incentive that in favor of affordable housing sort of like what is it that from your meeting that you can give a developer where they will see it as a, whether they'll maybe pay something towards affordable housing to offsite, not necessarily say their development?
You mean for office projects? That they have to pay some type of contribution that will go towards affordable housing?
I don't have the answer, yes, but someone who's coming in for Class A office building, and we offer them an incentive, and the contribution will go towards affordable housing. I'm not sure what they will be looking for, so that may be something you will get from the meeting you had with them. Then that could be that one it factor that say, yes, I'm willing to pay that to have my office building in downtown.
We have not explored that, but it's an interesting. I mean, the issue is up to this point, we had to create incentives to promote the construction of office and hotels. So at this point, we are in the level where we don't need to incentivize them more. We have not discussed if we are there where we can require them to pay something in addition. They will have to pay for the TDRs at this point, so that's an additional expense. But it's an interesting point.
Thank you.
I just had one real quick question. Using the example of the 303 Banyan, for the mix between studios, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom, it seemed to be about even 33%. I mean, it was pretty close. Is there a ratio that is in some sort of table that I mean, can they do 20 studios or 21 bedrooms, or is there a ratio that they have to maintain for that
The way
mix?
we wrote it is based, the set-aside units have to reflect the same ratio that they are proposing for the market rate. So we're letting them decide what is the market demand for the size of the unit, and then whatever they pick, that the set-aside units have to be split the same way. Except the large units, we wanted to not require them to do the 3 bedrooms because the difference is too much.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is everyone satisfied their inquiries? Okay, perfect. Someone like to make a motion?
Motion for approval. I move that the Downtown Action Committee recommend approval for PB case number 1882A. This motion is based upon the factual testimony presented, the staff report, and the findings that the proposed amendment complies with all the amendment standards found in section 9432 of the zoning and land development regulations.
Okay, motion is second.
Second?
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None, all right, the motion carries. Thank you for your hard work, guys, and looking forward to seeing this successful program.
Thank you very much for your input.
Yeah, and I guess that's any unfinished business or new business while we're here? No? All right, well, good. Good to see everybody again. We'll adjourn today's meeting. We'll see you next month.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yes.
Because we mentioned the comment of transportation and transit, I have to say that the Palm Beach CPA does have a 561 transit plan that I can send it to Anna Maria, then he could share with you guys, because it's very, I think, a good plan for the future, that it will help us see what's happening, what the vision that the TPA has for the county, and working with Palm Beach County for on transit.
Yeah, that'd be great, yeah.
Yep,
Send that around.
Thank you.
Look at it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.
Good day.